Interesting case. I think this came from that Florida surfer guy. He had a strategy that didn't look too good after we did the separation of the 1 day from the signal to the execution chip. And when I looked at his thing and I wanted the value of the score that we use versus the time constant, and I got this funny stuff here. And in fact, what it was doing was the old method was finding that peak. And after it found this peak by this means, then it did one other further enhancement that helped it a lot more. But after we shifted that, it didn't find that peak anymore, and it said, "Ugh." So I looked at it and found what the cause was, and here's one of those chaotic things. So let's click one more time, please. So and even with progressive tuning, the progressive tuning didn't find his thing either. And so any kind of, what you'll find in your strategies, if you change the born-on date, change it a different time, then you have a different set of history in the back, and it can take a slightly different path. If it takes a slightly different path, it might choose this fund this time and not that one, and this one might be unlucky, or that one might be lucky. So all these little small changes, like in born-on date or decision shift days, if you find they don't bother it too much, then you're probably more like this one here, which has a nice, well-defined peak, rather than something that's chaotic. One more click, please. And I made this strategy out of this one by taking two things out of it. We had some, in this case there was an REIT and a materials ETF in there, and both of those things act much more differently than a fund made out of companies that make products. REITs are more about interest rates jumping around, and materials are more about commodities.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I fully understand the graph. So it says 4. So what's the y-axis? The x-axis is a time constant, right?
Yeah, that's a time constant. And within the context of SectorSurfer, you might remember, well, go back a slide or two until you get a chart. Okay, so on every chart we have this score and safety, alpha beta measurement here. The score has a lot to do with the full return, the average return for all years, and it's slightly heavily weighted with a little bit of the 3-year on there, and then it takes into account some risk. So those three things go into the measure of the score. So now back to where we were. This is a plot of that score value, which is mostly return. And this is kind of chaotic. And the optimization algorithm uses the score value because it wants to make sure risk is within reason too. So the comment I made over here is I would point out that this is pretty consistent with the general notion I put together for how to make a 401k strategy. On the advanced tab of the categories, you'll see a category of the rules for making a 401k strategy. And people send me their 401k things, oh, help me put this together. And you can blindly use the little rules that are in, there's 8 little rules in there, and they will almost make you the best 401k strategy. You should almost never have an REIT in your 401k strategy. Almost never put your company stock in there. You know, there's a couple of rules like that. These guys are different, and they can cause chaos because they're not moving the baton the same way. Yes.
So the one on the left is not stationary, and the one on the right is?
Well, the stationary, I would say, is if I did this for the first half a period and the second half a period, and they were different, then they wouldn't be stationary. They can both be ugly like this in the early period and the later period, and it's stationary because the shape has not changed. But this is a bad shape if you want to
You want a single
tune.
peak, right?
Pardon me?
You want a single peak,
You want a single peak, yeah.
but I'm not clear.
This
was
might
that-
be
was that-
stationary,
was
but
that a
it's-
result of the specific choice of the 12 vehicles used?
Yes, well, we'll get to that
Which means
strategy.
It depends on us to choose the proper vehicles, right?
Yes.
Right.
You can't just pull random stuff out of the refrigerator and say, I'm gonna have a great dinner.
A candy ETF.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if I have a strategy that's already existing, I make a change in one of the stocks, it'll be back biased by previous selections of the strategy. So would I be better off just erasing the whole strategy and then re-entering it on this selection, and then would it automatically keep it?
I think I understood what you said. Did it include the concept that if you take one
Out.
out,
And then
put another one in, that the remnants of the old one are there in the history?
Right.
They are not.
Oh, they're not. Okay.
Whenever you change a fund or a stock in something, then that's cause to start from scratch. Let's see what this setup is, and then we'll go look at that setup.
I assume you can't produce this in SectorSurfer, it's just something they show us to explain what's going on, right?
You saying you want a button so you can
Well,
see these?
well, actually,
Yeah.
yes. Actually, let me just phrase it differently. What I find interesting about this is that by looking at the shape and the fact you have a nice peak, that says something about the stability of that strategy, right?
Yes.
As you said.
Confidence.
So that figure, if you will, which I guess is well represented by a graph, and I'm not sure if you could come up with a number, but I mean, that's useful because that tells you, hey, you got the strategy that has worked pretty good, and even when you tweak stuff, it still works pretty good in the past, so maybe it'll work well in the future, right? Versus another one that's all over the place.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a little more information and then ask for a vote of whether I should add something. Okay, so this new tuning mechanism for the walk forward actually runs 21 strategies at a time, all with the different tunings, all through the history. And at any given time, therefore, there's 20 points that are known and kept. And in the trade signal history pop-up, some of you probably know there's a little button there to download the CSV spreadsheet of that. Would you like those 21 values added to the bottom of that? Vote.
More information, always,
Okay.
to an engineer, you know you want
downside?
more data.
Never enough.
Okay, I knew what the answer would be, and I kind of thought Al's head would be up first.
Yeah.
What is the x-axis again?
That's a time constant of the filter, if you will, the trend filter.
I thought that was fixed. That's something you choose and tune, right? So why do we have a variation?
Well, you don't have a variation. For any of the periods, you know, with the little yellow dots along the time axis, at each one of those points in time, it's going to say what is the peak from the past, and it'll then use that number fixed for 125 days. And then it'll go look at the mess again and say where's the peak. Then it'll go look at, you know, it's a iterative thing. And the reason that you do it, now if you use Fidelity sector funds that have been around for a long time from the beginning, this is very stable. But it seems to me that if you look at a bunch of the strategies out there, there's a lot of strategies that are made out of stuff that maybe has a 15 or 20 year history. And then we got these new things coming in here that are only 10 years old, and some more new things that are only 5 years old. And to expect that 20 years will pick something and expect it to work after we throw these new things in is not so good. So the hope is that when you throw these new things in and start moving that around, that it's going to track it. So we'll take a look every half a year and see if we should move it a little bit. But at every point along the way, each of these 125-day intervals, we will pick a fixed number, and we'll be using that for 125 days. And we'll, again, ask where the peak is, then use one. But this is kind of the map of the thing that it's looking at to say, where's the peak?
Is that score based on each component, or is that the portfolio? You said you bring in these new
This
funds
is-
and it changes.
Think of it this way, we've got the strategy of, let's say, 12 funds.
Yeah.
And for the tuning time constant of the trend filter, I can pick 10 days, 15, 20, 20, and anything along in this region. And if I were to run the whole strategy on 10 days, I'd be able to get this much output. If I run it on 17 days, that's up at the peak. If I pick this one, it's way down there in performance. So I don't want those. I know that these things exist, but the real operation of it, the algorithm says, well, here's where we're going to operate. We know these exist, but we're going to operate here. So the fact that we have that information doesn't mean that you're going to use it or it's going to bother you. The algorithm uses this information to decide where the peak is.
So in a sense, it's a measure of the robustness of the strategy as to how sharp the peak is. Is that a fair
Yeah,
statement?
The narrower the peak, the harder the peak is defined. You want a peak that has some slopes so that you can sort of climb the hill. Because
A bell curve,
I'm only
right?
going to take 20 points along here, and if it's a flat thing with a spike and it's between two of my samples, it'll never get found.
Right.
So, but it will, if it's a mounded thing, and the peak is in between two things, it'll interpolate in between.
Why not just smooth the curve?
Well, you better pick some things that create a smooth curve. This is the result of what you pick. This is the evaluation of what would happen at these different time constants for the stuff you throw at it.
No, but can't one take the score curve, smooth that, and then use that to pick the time constant?
But that's the result you'll get, whatever you
Or am I
pick.
missing something? I guess I'm missing something.
Well, you could smooth it, but then you might end up with the peak being said to be over here.
Yeah.
You want where the peak really is.
Do you have some additional slides?
We're almost done. How much time do we have?
You have about another 10 minutes.
10 minutes. I'll take questions at the end. We have to get some.
One quick discussion.
Okay, cool.
So that peak is the score. So if you had a score of 200, you'd have a peaky waveform. If you had a score of 0, you'd have a flat line like that.
Yeah, it's good. A score of 0 would mean you make 0% over all the years.
So
Yeah.
what you're looking for in this number on your chart is a high score.
High score is
And
good,
that
yeah.
basically equates to what you're doing.
Yes. Next, please.